Hey everybody, this is Josh Runquist for Heavy Debriefings, and after this part of the series, we only have 5 episodes left. I can't believe we're at this point, so let's finish it off strong with this last part of the series, starting it off here with the top 10 albums of 2017. Coming in at number 10 is Obituary with their self-titled album, and this is what I feel is the best Obituary album to date. I know a lot of people may feel differently and they feel that the brand new album that came out this year is their best work. I still gotta hand it to the self-titled. I know some people may disagree, but let me explain. This is essentially a best of Obituary with brand new material. Whether you love some of the more slowy doomer elements on here, it's on here. Whether you love that fast-paced Obituary, well, fast-paced for Obituary, it's on here as well. It's super catchy, has fantastic production. The Tardy brothers just sound incredible together, and the rest of the lineup of course does as well. It's short, sweet, and everything you want an Obituary album to be. Nothing more, nothing less. That's why it's here at number 10. You should go check it out for yourself if you love that old school Florida death metal feel. Coming in at number 9 is Cyro with Letters to Myself. This magnificent debut album featuring past and present members of Amaranth, In Flames, Camelot, and more is a fantastic album from start to finish. It's got great melodic metal elements. You're not going to hear any screams or growls on this album. It's all pure, clean vocals. But it does have that great classic era In Flames feel behind it, which is awesome to hear. More modern takes that if you hear something like more modern day Camelot or Amaranth, you'll find something to really appreciate here. And then they have their own sounds that they've been able to create themselves, which are really focused on their sophomore album, No Halos in Hell. This is a fantastic debut album, and I'm so happy to see this band is still rolling in some capacity. Even though Jesper does have the Halo effect going on, Cyro is not dead, and I can't wait to see what they do next. At number 8 is the second, and for all intents and purposes, could potentially be the last album from the band Power Trip with Nightmare Logic. Anyone who has heard Power Trip and doesn't think this is the best album that they put out, and one of the best thrash metal albums of the 2010s, is lying to themselves. It's got that great heavy thrash element to it. It's almost bordering on death metal at times, and it never goes crazy with double bass or blast beats. It just fits the mold perfectly. And it's got that great crossover feel behind it too, because there's some great punk elements that almost hit in here as well. So, thrash kids, punk kids, and death metal kids will find something to really appreciate about this album. Of course, this album did come at a price because Riley did die not long after this album, and it's unfortunate to see that his passing happened, because I would have loved to have seen what he could have done as a frontman for the generation that he was really starting up on. But unfortunately, that's the world that we live in right now. The rest of the members of the band do have other bands, and they did release a live album this year that is getting a full record release, but I don't know if anything's going to be coming of that. That could be a last hurrah to Riley. I don't know. But at least they do have 2 fantastic albums, and of course Nightmare Logic is without question the better of the 2. And if you want to check out the magic and the power, no pun intended, that Power Trip is all about, check this album out immediately. Coming up at number 7 is Mastodon with Emperor's Sand, and especially after their previous album Once More Around the Sun, this was the album that they needed to make. Even though it is a very dark album when you look at the concept of this album going through cancer and all the battles and struggles that goes in within it, it is a fantastic album, musically, lyrically, thematically, everything that goes into it. Bron Daler does his most vocals, I believe, on this album, doing 9 of 11 songs on here. At least doing backup vocals, if not doing full leads, which is absolutely insane considering what he has to do on the drums. There's some songs that are nice, punchy, hard rock songs that were perfect for Top 40 radio. Other ones get more proggy and sludgy. Other ones just feel like pure Mastodon. It's got a little bit of everything, and it is the definition of a grower of an album. It doesn't show off with glitz and glamour like some of their other albums do, where you can just go into it and instantly love it. It is an album that you have to give it time. And if you give it several spins, everything slowly starts to click together and everything starts to make sense. I've seen more than enough people say that they didn't really enjoy it the first time that they heard it, but upon repeat listens, it grew more and more, and it became one of their favorite albums. I know that's true of me as well. It's not my favorite Mastodon album, but I'm pretty sure it's number 2 or 3, depending on how you look at things. I did a backwards marathon on Mastodon that you should go check out, see where that ranking was. But with Mastodon, things constantly change all the time for me. But for Emperor's Sand, I don't see enough people talking about it nowadays, but you should definitely give it a chance if this sounds like it's something that's up your alley. Coming in at number 6 is, at least up to now, the penultimate album from Paradise Lost, Medusa. And I say that knowing that they're going to be making a new album next year, and they do have one album after this that you may or may not see, wink wink nudge nudge. But yeah, as of now, this is the second to last Paradise Lost album of material. And with that, it is by far the heaviest album that they ever put out. It puts things like Gothic and Lost Paradise to absolute shame as far as its heaviness goes. It is pure death doom and gothic metal combined. It takes all those ideas of the early stuff, takes the stuff that they learned along the way, and basically recreated one of their earliest albums to become one of the darkest albums that they've done with all new material. Of course, they haven't lost everything that they had up until this point. There's still some clean vocals that show up here occasionally, but it is so predominantly a death doom album that I can see how some fans of Paradise Lost are turned away from this album, but for me, I love it. It's slow, it's brooding, it's brutal, it hits you so heavy, and it's very cathartic, and it makes you appreciate the things around you, and hey, if an album can do that, it's gotta be something good, right? Yeah, Medusa, like the idea of turning you into stone by looking into her eyes, or her hair, depending on the way that you look at things. It feels like you're turned into stone while you listen to this because of how slow and hard and brooding everything becomes. And if that's what you like out of Paradise Lost, you need to give this album a chance. Coming in at number 5 is Zornheim with Where Hatred Dwells and Darkness Reigns. Now, this is a part of an ongoing concept that goes throughout the entire band and is continuing on with their next album and everything that goes on forward, all dealing with an asylum, past, present, and future, and dealing with the inmates inside, the experiments that go on inside, and so much more that you should look into if this sounds like it's up your alley. And with the For Fans Of section, I think I nailed it pretty perfectly. Symphonic, blackened, melodic death metal. It's got everything in there in strides. It's got great melodies and harmonies, great symphonic moments, and it's filled with pure blackened death metal as well. It's got everything that you're looking for when it comes to those styles, and this band just simply rules, and not enough people talk about them. They are very dangerously underrated, and they need to be talked about more, and I might just do that later in the series. But it all starts with this album, and you need to go check it out because it only gets better from here. Coming in at number 4 is Pallbearer with Heartless, and without question, without a shadow of a doubt, their best album. They did everything right on this album. I wish I could have seen them on tour for this album because these songs just simply rule, and if they're this good on record, I can only imagine how much more crushing they are in a live setting. This album is just perfect for doom metal in all variations on this album. All clean vocals because that's the Pallbearer style, and I think it fits their style so very well. It makes the music just that little bit more haunting, knowing that it's all clean vocals as well. And while it's not my favorite doom metal album of the year, trust me, we're getting to that. This album has some of the greatest highs and lows in doom metal, especially in the 2010s. Everything about this is just fantastic. And especially the final track, A Plea for Understanding, still hits me in a way that no other doom metal song really has. Even if I like some more better, this one will always stick with me till the end of my time. And if you want some great clean vocal doom metal that doesn't sound like Black Sabbath, but just sounds like doom metal with clean vocals, you need to check out Pallbearer. Coming in at number 3 is what I'll just say is the latest album from Sixth, The Future in Whose Eyes. And I really hope this won't be the last album that they put out. I feel like they did such a magnificent job on this album that they really need to follow it up, even if it's already been 6 years since it's come out, and I can't believe I'm saying it's been 6 years, but hey, here we are. This is a return album that no one really saw coming, but I'm so glad that it happened. I mean, they did put out a mini EP before this, but the fact that they got back together, they finally toured the US for the first time, and I was so thankful to be able to see that tour, and I actually became good friends with Mikey Goodman ever since. This album just contains everything that was so great about Death of a Dead Day, and be able to just make it their own into the 2010s. Like the proggier moments are even proggier, the heavier moments are even heavier, the more commercial aspects are even more commercial. Like there's moments that sound like Opeth, there's moments that sound like Periphery, there's moments that just sound like Sixth, and some great experimental moments that go on throughout that you'll either love or hate or think is okay. Really, even if this is the last Sixth album, and I really hope it won't be, this is one hell of a note to be able to go out on, and it's a fantastic album that is right up there, right on par with Death of a Dead Day. Coming in at number 2 is essentially the quintessential funeral doom metal album, depending on who you ask, and much like I talked about in the last part of this series, I might have to talk about my favorite doom metal albums and really rank them to see what's number 1, but hey, let's say this is it for now. It is Bell Witch with the magnum opus, Mirror Reaper. This album does feel like a funeral march. It feels like a funeral dirge in all of the best ways and worst ways when you really think about the aspects of death and losing someone that you love and care about. And in this particular case, a band member. The whole album is dedicated to his memory and just the idea of death and what's beyond, and just looking at the shadow of death, the Grim Reaper, and what goes on next. Of course, we don't really know. None of us have ever died and come back to life. That's not a thing that exists, but we can imagine. It also has one of the greatest album covers of all time. And there's a reason why so many bands wanted to use the artist for this album cover for their own albums. And you can definitely tell his style. So many great, huge things, and then you see like a person so tiny in comparison. It's one of those things that you just look at it and it's instantly recognizable who did the artwork. Of course, the big elephant in the room is that this is an hour and 23 minutes long. And soon it won't even be the longest song that they've ever done, as they're doing a 3-part song that's released in 3 parts that's all connected as one, and that's going to be even bigger than this. So it's a massive undertaking unless you really love this style. For everyone, it's not going to be. But for those that do love funeral doom metal, that do love predominantly clean vocals with the occasional death growl that happens in there, if you love your music slow, brooding, and almost dreamlike, this is an album that you need to check out. And if you've never checked out Bell Witch, it is a polarizing band. But if you like what you hear, you've made an amazing new discovery. And number 1, my favorite album of 2017 is Pain of Salvation with In the Passing Light of Day. Now, this album is thematically and conceptually about Daniel Ginlow going into the hospital, nearly dying in the hospital, and about his thoughts and memories about being in his hospital bed. This is too relatable to me, as that happened to me in 2013. This happened to him a couple years later than myself, but all the feelings that he experiences here are things that I absolutely dealt with. So, especially on that conceptual level, this is one of my favorite albums of all time because it is so damn relatable. But thankfully, the music matches up perfectly to it. Whether it's beautiful acoustic passages, super heavy, crushing Pain of Salvation riffs that we finally hear again, after more or less a decade of more of the classic rock kind of feel that he was going for a while, to some more of the modern stuff, which you definitely hear on the latest album, Panther, which is more or less controversial, but hey, different strokes for different folks. As for myself, this is the pinnacle of what Pain of Salvation has been going for so long, and especially with the name Pain of Salvation, I really feel it just matches up so perfectly with In the Passing Light of Day. When you hear everything musically and conceptually that's going on here, the name makes so much more sense. And sadly, it did happen that way, but it has a new appreciation. And Daniel is taking control of his life after this point. He started getting into better shape. He started really taking care of himself. He's doing capoeira now. And it's just so great to be able to see everything that he's been able to accomplish, and it is in a much happier state. Myself, I am still really struggling with depression, suicidal thoughts, all those things, but I'm still here, which means I still get to keep trying, and that's what really matters. All that and more, just listen to yourself and see how you feel about my favorite album of 2017, In the Passing Light of Day. And there you go, folks, my favorite top 10 albums of 2017. What did you think? Did you like the list? Did you find some new discoveries? Did you not like the list? Do you want to crap on me for my own personal opinion? Let all of that and more emotions down below. And thank you very much for checking this out. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Let people know about this page. Let people know about this channel. Let people know about me and what I do with Heavy Debriefings. Nearly 12 years strong now. I want to be able to keep this going for as long as I can. So continue to help me out, and I'll continue to try to make the best quality content that I possibly can. Or at least what I'm capable of. And until the top 10 albums of 2018, my next album review, next interview, top 10 list, or anything else that I put up here on the Heavy Debriefings YouTube channel, this is Josh Runquist from Heavy Debriefings saying, see ya.